What if I told you there is someone who thinks about you when the world gets quiet, especially right before they fall asleep? Not in a surface way, not in the way people usually think about attraction or appearance, but in a much deeper, softer sense. They think about your tiredness, the kind you carry silently, the kind you've learned to hide so well that even people close to you don't notice it anymore. They didn't fall for you just because you appear strong. That was never the real reason. What pulled them in was something quieter than strength, something more human. It was the part of you that keeps going even when you are emotionally exhausted. The part that still shows up, still smiles, still functions, even when you feel like no one really sees what it costs you to do that. They love your laughter, yes, but what stays with them even more is your silence. The moments when your energy shifts, when your eyes drift somewhere far away, when you pretend everything is fine even though something inside you feels heavy. It's that contrast that they notice, the way you can be present in a room and still feel a little distant from yourself. That is what they don't overlook. And no, they don't want a perfect version of you. They are not building an idea in their mind of someone who is always okay, always bright, always easy to understand. That version doesn't exist anyway. What they want is you in your most honest form. The version of you that doesn't perform. The version that doesn't feel the need to hold everything together all the time. If this already sounds like something poetic, then there is something deeper behind it. Because this is not just admiration, it is attachment built on emotional recognition. They see something in you that feels familiar in a strange way, like they've always understood parts of you that you never fully explained out loud. And if you listen closely to what this kind of connection is pointing toward, it goes far beyond attraction. It becomes something like emotional homecoming. It is not about being impressed by you. It is about being able to stay with you, especially in the moments when you are not at your best. They don't want to marry you just to show the world that they found someone special. That kind of thinking is too shallow for what they feel. Instead, the idea of marriage, for them, is something much quieter and more grounded. It is about presence. It is about continuity. It is about waking up next to someone and knowing you don't have to pretend to be emotionally strong every single day. They imagine moments that don't look cinematic at all. Not grand gestures or perfect scenes. They imagine ordinary mornings, your hair slightly messy, your eyes still half closed, your thoughts still slowly coming together. And in that simplicity, they feel something real, something steady, something they don't want to lose. When your mind becomes too loud at night, they don't want to fix you or silence you. They just want to be there, close enough that you don't feel alone inside your own thoughts. When you say, "I'm fine," but your tone says otherwise, they notice. Not because they are trying to analyze you, but because they are paying attention in a way that feels natural, not forced. And when you fall back into the habit of acting strong because life has taught you that vulnerability is risky, they don't push you. They don't demand that you open up on command. They simply stay steady enough for you to eventually lower your guard without fear. And in that space, something soft begins to happen between two people. They don't just love the version of you that smiles easily. They also feel deeply connected to the parts of you that carry weight. The emotions you swallow, the thoughts you don't always express, the moments you sit in silence and try to process everything on your own. To them, even those unseen parts matter. But perhaps the most important truth in all of this is that they are not trying to rescue you. They are not trying to turn you into someone different or take responsibility for your life. They simply want to exist beside you while you are already becoming who you are. They understand that you survived long before they ever appeared in your life. And they also understand that you would continue to survive even if they were not there. But still, they don't want your survival to feel so isolated anymore. They want it to feel shared, supported, witnessed. And when they think about the future, it is not defined by noise or spectacle. It is defined by stillness, by small shared routines, by comfort that doesn't need to be announced to the world. A quiet morning where nothing needs to be proven and everything simply is. They admire your independence, but there is something even deeper in the way they feel about you. It is not a desire to take that independence away. It is a quiet wish to be the place where you can finally lower your defenses, where you don't feel the need to keep everything together all the time. So why haven't they said anything yet? It is not because they don't feel strongly enough. And it is not because they are unsure about what they want. For them, love is not something to rush into or treat lightly. They are not afraid of commitment itself. What holds them back is something more personal. They are afraid they might not be enough for the depth of your heart. They see what you've been through. They understand, in their own way, that when your heart has been hurt, it doesn't just reset easily, it carries memory, it carries weight. And because they recognize that, they don't want to enter your life in a careless or unfinished way. Before they speak, before they step forward, they are trying to become steady enough to stay. They don't want to be a temporary feeling or a passing phase in your story. They want to be consistent, something real enough to survive time, silence, and the ordinary days that most people overlook. Their quietness is not disinterest. It is intention. It is them trying to make sure that if they do come closer, it will not be halfway. And the life they imagine with you is not built on fantasy or excess. It is simple in a way that feels grounding. It is not about luxury or performance. It is about safety. It is about an emotional space where you don't have to stay strong every minute of the day. A place where even your tiredness is allowed to exist without explanation. They imagine small moments that mean more than anything grand. You coming home, exhausted, leaning into them without having to say much, resting your head against their chest, and finally allowing yourself to say, "I'm tired," without needing to justify it. And in that moment, they don't question you. They just understand. They want to notice the smallest changes in you. The shift in your voice when something is wrong, the silence that carries more meaning than words, the subtle signs that others might miss. To them, being close to you means being attentive in a quiet, natural way, not invasive but present. They want to be the last person you hold on to before sleep takes over. The final sense of calm at the end of a long day. When the world feels overwhelming, they don't want to compete with it. They just want to be the steady warmth you can return to. But there is a question hidden underneath all of this, one that you may not always ask yourself. Do you actually know how to receive love like that? Not the loud, uncertain kind that comes and goes, but the steady, patient kind that doesn't rush you, doesn't pressure you, and doesn't try to fix you. You have spent so much of your life being the strong one, the one who listens, the one who understands others before being understood, the one who fixes things quietly without asking for much in return. And because of that, receiving care might feel unfamiliar at first. What happens when someone doesn't need you to hold everything together? What happens when someone simply wants to stand beside you, not above you, not ahead of you, but with you through everything that comes next? To hold your hand when you feel overwhelmed, and to gently remind you who you are when you start to forget it yourself. But what affects them the most is something even deeper. After everything you have been through, your heart is still open. You are still kind, still hopeful, still capable of loving in a deep and genuine way, even when life hasn't always given you the same in return. That kind of heart leaves an impression that is hard to ignore. They notice that about you, and it draws them in a quiet, serious way. Not in a fleeting attraction, but in something more steady. A fragile kind of strength that has been tested, but not destroyed. And somehow, that makes you even more meaningful to them. They don't just want to be someone who says the right words. They want to be someone who chooses you fully. No hesitation, no divided attention, no emotional distance, not a half-love that disappears when things get difficult, but something complete, shown through consistency, not promises. And if they ever step into your life in a real way, they won't arrive with noise or dramatic declarations. They won't try to impress you with big statements or overwhelming gestures. Their presence will be quieter than that, more grounded, more real. They will simply stay. Stay when things are easy, and stay when they are not. Stay when you are sure of yourself, and stay when doubt starts to creep in. Stay when you are calm, and stay when your emotions feel heavier than usual. Their love will not be about convenience, but about consistency. They will not come to add pressure to your life. They will come to make it lighter, to take some of the weight you've been carrying alone for too long and share it with you in a way that feels natural, not forced. Not a burden, but a partnership. Almost like a quiet agreement between two hearts. From this point forward, we don't have to carry everything alone anymore. We carry it together. So the real question becomes something you may not often pause to consider. If someone truly showed up in your life like that, steady and sincere, not asking to control you but simply to stand beside you, would you let them in? Or would you still find yourself saying, "I can handle it on my own"? Because sometimes that sentence sounds strong on the outside, but inside it carries something quieter. A habit of holding everything, a pattern of not wanting to owe anyone anything, a way of protecting yourself from disappointment before it even has a chance to happen. And maybe that has served you in the past. Maybe there were moments when you really did have to rely on yourself, when no one came through, when support wasn't available, when being strong wasn't a choice, it was survival. So over time, independence didn't just become something you do, it became who you are. But here is something worth sitting with gently. There is a difference between being capable and being closed. There is a difference between being strong and never letting anyone stand close enough to see your softer side. And sometimes, without noticing, what once protected you can slowly become a wall you no longer remember building. Imagine someone who doesn't come into your life to take over, but to stay present. Not someone who tries to fix you, not someone who demands that you change, but someone who simply remains consistent, someone who doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable, someone who doesn't make you feel like you have to perform strength just to be accepted. At first, that kind of presence can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because when you are used to handling everything alone, steady support can feel almost suspicious. You might start wondering what the catch is. You might wait for the moment they pull away. You might test their patience without even realizing it, just to confirm what your past already taught you. But not every person is a repetition of what hurt you before. And still, letting that truth land takes time. Because the deeper question is not just whether someone is willing to show up for you. The deeper question is whether you are willing to stay present when they do. Whether you can allow yourself to receive without immediately returning to independence as a reflex. Whether you can sit in the discomfort of being seen, supported, and not always in control. There is a kind of vulnerability in that which is often overlooked. People talk about strength as if it only lives in standing alone. But there is another kind of strength in staying open when your instinct is to pull back. In not shutting the door just because someone is knocking too gently and too consistently for what you are used to. You might not even notice how often you choose distance over connection, how quickly you turn down help, how easily you say, "It's fine, I've got it," even when part of you is tired. Not because you don't want connection, but because letting someone in means trusting that they won't use your openness against you later. And that trust is not built in a moment. It is built slowly, through repetition, through small proofs, through time. So if someone did show up like that, steady, patient, emotionally present, it would naturally stir something inside you. Not just attraction, but reflection. Because they would be meeting a version of you that is not always asked to exist. The version of you that doesn't have to carry everything alone. The version that doesn't always have to be the one holding it together. And that version might feel unfamiliar at first. You might find yourself questioning it, overthinking it, trying to find the hidden imbalance, trying to decide when it will fall apart. Because expecting things to end abruptly can sometimes feel safer than allowing them to unfold naturally. But connection does not always arrive with warning signs of failure. Sometimes it arrives quietly, without urgency, without chaos, without the emotional intensity that you may have once mistaken for love. And this is where the real shift happens. Because letting someone in is not just about them proving themselves to you. It is also about you unlearning the belief that you always have to earn care by struggling first. It is about allowing support without feeling like you are losing something in return. It is about understanding that independence does not have to mean isolation. You can still be strong and still be supported. You can still be capable and still be held emotionally by someone who genuinely cares. These things are not opposites, even if life once made them feel that way, and yet part of you may still hesitate. Because there is a kind of safety in self-reliance that feels predictable. If you rely on yourself, you already know the outcome. You already know the limits. You already know how it ends. But when someone else enters that space, everything becomes uncertain, and uncertainty can feel like risk, but it can also feel like possibility. So again, the question comes back to you, quietly but honestly. If someone truly showed up in your life like that, steady, sincere, not demanding control, not trying to change you, just willing to be there, would you let them in? Or would you instinctively step back? Not because you don't want it, but because somewhere inside you still believe that depending on yourself is the safest way to exist. And if you notice that hesitation, there is no need to rush past it. It is not something to judge. It is something to understand. Because every wall that exists inside you once had a reason to be built. But not every wall is meant to stay forever. And from there, something even quieter begins to change in you. You stop treating every emotional moment as something you must immediately fix, interpret, or escape from. You begin to understand that not everything inside you is a signal that demands action. Some things are just waves passing through. Some feelings are not instructions, they are simply movement. And when you stop reacting to every single wave as if it defines your entire inner world, you create a kind of space that most people never really experience. In that space, you can feel without collapsing into the feeling. You can notice without becoming overwhelmed. You can stay aware without turning awareness into control. And that is where a deeper kind of intelligence starts to grow inside you. Not the kind that reacts quickly, but the kind that understands slowly. You start to see how much of your past used to live inside your present moments. How often you were not actually responding to the person in front of you, but to memories, expectations, and old emotional patterns that had nothing to do with what was actually happening. And once you see that clearly, even once, something inside you cannot fully return to unconscious reacting in the same way. Because now there is a gap, a small space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you begin to reclaim yourself. You realize that presence is not just about paying attention outwardly. It is also about staying with yourself long enough to not abandon your own inner experience. Not leaving yourself when something feels uncertain. Not disconnecting the moment something feels unfamiliar or intense. Staying with yourself becomes its own kind of strength. And strangely, the more you stay with yourself, the less you need to rush toward conclusions about others. You begin to see people more clearly, not through the lens of fear or hope, but through observation. You start to notice tone instead of assumptions, behavior instead of projections, consistency instead of fantasy. And that clarity is not cold. It is actually more gentle than confusion ever was. Because confusion always pushes you to fill in the blanks quickly. Clarity allows the blanks to remain blank until something real fills them naturally. There is also something important that begins to soften inside you over time. The belief that you must protect yourself by shutting down emotionally. You begin to understand that protection and disconnection are not the same thing. Protection can be awareness. It can be boundaries. It can be choosing slowly. But disconnection removes you from the experience entirely. And when you are disconnected, even the safest opportunities can feel uncertain. Even genuine moments can feel suspicious, not because they are unsafe, but because you are not fully present to feel them accurately. So you begin learning a different kind of protection. One that does not remove you from life, but keeps you grounded inside it. You learn how to stay open enough to observe, but steady enough not to lose yourself. You learn how to pause without shutting down, how to wait without withdrawing, how to feel without falling apart. And this balance does not arrive all at once. It is not something you decide intellectually and suddenly embody. It develops through repetition, through small moments where you choose not to react immediately, where you choose not to label something too quickly, where you allow a situation to breathe instead of controlling its meaning too early. And slowly, your nervous system begins to. This is where emotional patience becomes a form of intelligence. Not passive waiting, but active presence. Staying aware while not rushing ahead. Staying open while not losing discernment. Staying grounded while still allowing possibility. And over time, something very subtle becomes your new normal. You no longer feel the same urgency to define every connection instantly. You no longer feel the same pressure to interpret every silence. You no longer feel the need to turn every moment into a conclusion. Instead, you begin to live inside the experience itself. You allow people to show who they are gradually. You allow yourself to respond gradually. You allow trust to form through consistency rather than assumption. And this way of being does not make you distant. It makes you more available in a real sense. Because you are no longer reacting from fear or fantasy. You are responding from what is actually present. And in that state, even small moments feel different. A simple conversation carries more weight because you are fully there for it. A quiet pause does not feel empty because you are not trying to escape it. A gesture, a tone, a glance becomes more meaningful because you are not distracted by inner noise. You start to understand that connection was never missing. Your attention was just too divided to fully receive it. And when attention becomes steady, life does not suddenly become perfect, but it becomes clearer. Less distorted, less rushed, more real. And maybe that is what presence actually is. Not a constant state of calm or control, but a willingness to stay with what is happening long enough for truth to become visible on its own. Not forcing understanding, not forcing connection, not forcing certainty, just staying, long enough to see what is actually there.